Hey, my friend, I want to talk to you about something that's been on my mind lately. Something I've noticed about the way we handle difficult moments in life. You know what's interesting? We all face problems. Every single one of us. Doesn't matter where you live, what you do, how successful you are. Problems show up. Challenges knock on your door. Obstacles appear right when you think everything's going smoothly. But here's what fascinates me. Two people can face the exact same problem, same circumstances, same pressure, same uncertainty. Yet one person feels completely trapped while the other person somehow finds a way forward. Why is that? I used to think some people were just naturally better at handling stress, like they were born with some special ability the rest of us didn't have. But the more I observed, the more I talked to people who seemed unusually calm during chaos, the more I realized something profound. It's not about having fewer problems. It's about where your mind goes when problems appear. Let me explain what I mean. Think about the last time something went wrong in your life. Maybe a plan fell through. Maybe you made a mistake at work. Maybe a relationship hit a rough patch. Maybe money got tight unexpectedly. What happened in your mind during those first few moments? For most of us, and I'm including myself here, the mind does something automatic. It zooms in on a problem. It starts asking questions like, why is this happening? And how bad is this going to get? And what if things get even worse? These questions feel important. They feel necessary. After all, you're trying to understand the situation, right? But here's the thing, my friend. These questions do something sneaky. They pull your attention deeper and deeper into the problem itself. Your mind starts replaying what went wrong. It starts imagining worst-case scenarios. It starts building this massive story about how difficult everything is. And the more attention you give to the problem, the bigger it grows in your mind. I see this all the time. Someone faces a setback, and within minutes, their mind has turned one difficulty into a complete disaster. One mistake becomes proof they're not good enough. One bad day becomes evidence their entire life is falling apart. The problem grows. It gets heavier. It starts feeling impossible to solve. But here's what I've learned, and this is so important, I want you to really hear this. The problem itself is rarely the trap. The real trap is mentally living inside the problem. Let me say that again because it changed everything for me. The problem itself is rarely the trap. The real trap is mentally living inside the problem. When your mind stays focused on what went wrong, when it keeps replaying the difficulty, when it keeps circling around the obstacle, you lose something incredibly valuable. You lose the ability to move forward. Think about it like this. Imagine you're driving and you come across a huge boulder blocking the road. You stop the car. You look at the boulder. You think about how heavy it is, how it shouldn't be there, how unfair it is that it's blocking your path. You could sit there for hours thinking about that boulder, analyzing it, getting frustrated by it, imagining all the problems it's causing, but none of that thinking moves the boulder. Now imagine instead, after seeing the boulder, you ask yourself a different question. Okay, this is here. What can I actually do about it? Suddenly, your mind shifts. Maybe you can drive around it. Maybe you can call for help. Maybe you can move it piece by piece. Maybe there's another route entirely. The boulder hasn't changed. but your relationship with it has completely transformed. This is what powerful minds do differently, my friend. They don't ignore problems. They don't pretend difficulties don't exist. But they refuse to set up camp inside the problem. They refuse to make the problem their mental home. Instead, they train their attention to do something else. They train it to search for possibilities. And here's the beautiful truth. Your mind will always find what it's looking for. If you're looking for reasons why something is terrible, you'll find them. Your mind is incredibly good at collecting evidence for whatever you believe. If you're looking for proof that you can't handle something, your mind will serve up memories of past failures, fears about the future, doubts about your abilities. But if you train your mind to look for possibilities, for solutions, for the next step forward, guess what? It starts finding those too. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't pretending everything is fine when it's not. This is something much more powerful. This is redirecting your mental energy toward what actually helps. Let me share something with you. There's this principle I learned that changed how I see challenges. Attention is a resource. Where you place it determines what grows inside your mind. Think about attention like sunlight. Whatever you shine sunlight on begins to grow. If you keep your attention fixed on the problem grows larger in your experience. It dominates your thoughts. It fills your emotional space. It becomes all you can see. But if you shift that same attention toward action, toward solutions, toward what you can control, something different begins to grow. Possibilities appear, options emerge. The path forward starts revealing itself. I know what you might be thinking. But what if the problem really is serious? What if it's not just in my head? And you're right, my friend. Some problems are serious. Some challenges are genuinely difficult. I'm not suggesting you ignore reality or minimize real struggles. What I'm suggesting is this. Even with serious problems, you have a choice about where your mind lives. You can acknowledge a problem exists without dwelling in it for hours, days, or weeks. You can recognize something is difficult without letting that difficulty consume all your mental energy. You can face a real challenge while still asking, what's the next thing I can do? That question, my friend, that simple question changes everything. What's the next thing I can do? Not, how do I solve everything instantly? Not, how do I make this perfect? Just, what's the next thing I can do? Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's gathering information. Maybe it's asking for help. Maybe it's taking one small step forward, even though you can't see the whole path yet. But that question breaks the mental trap. It shifts your brain from paralysis to movement. And movement, even small movement, creates something powerful, momentum. When you start moving, something interesting happens in your mind. The problem stops feeling like a wall. It starts feeling like a puzzle. And puzzles invite curiosity instead of fear. Let me be honest with you about something. I wasn't always good at this. For years, whenever something went wrong, I'd spiral. My mind would race. I'd replay the situation over and over. I'd imagine every possible way things could get worse. And you know what all that worry accomplished? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It didn't solve a single problem. It didn't make any situation better. All it did was drain my energy and make me feel helpless. But here's the thing I discovered. You can train yourself out of this pattern. Your brain is not fixed, my friend. The way you think right now is not permanent. Your mind is adaptable. It learns. It changes based on what you practice. If you've spent years focusing on problems, your brain has gotten really good at detecting problems. That's just practice. That's just repetition. But starting today, right now, you can begin practicing something different. You can practice noticing when your mind is circling a problem. You can practice pausing instead of panicking. You can practice asking better questions. And over time, I promise you, your brain starts responding differently. Not overnight, not magically, but gradually, steadily, your mental patterns begin to shift. The same situations that used to overwhelm you start looking different. Not easier necessarily, but clearer, more manageable, more like something you can actually work with. Because here's what I've learned about powerful minds. They're not born. They're built, one moment at a time, one choice at a time, one shift in attention at a time. Nobody wakes up one day suddenly able to handle everything calmly. It's a skill, and like any skill, it develops through practice. Every time you face a difficulty and choose to look for the next step instead of dwelling on the obstacle, you're building that skill. Every time you notice your mind spiraling and gently redirect it toward action, you're strengthening that mental muscle. Every time you ask, "What can I do?" instead of, "Why is this happening?" you're training your brain to move in a more powerful direction. And my friend, I want you to know something important. You already have everything you need to start this shift. You don't need special circumstances. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to wait until you feel ready. You can start right now, wherever you are, with whatever you're facing. Maybe you're dealing with something difficult right now as you listen to this. Maybe there's a problem sitting heavy on your mind. Maybe there's a challenge you've been wrestling with. Here's what I want you to do. Just try this with me. Take a breath, a real one, deep and slow. Now, instead of thinking about how big the problem is, ask yourself, what's one small thing I could do about this? Not solve it completely, just one small action. Maybe it's making a list. Maybe it's reaching out to someone. Maybe it's researching options. Maybe it's just deciding to think about it fresh tomorrow after some rest. Whatever that small thing is, that's your starting point. Because powerful thinking doesn't start with solving massive problems instantly. It starts with taking the next available step. Now, let me tell you about something fascinating that happens inside your brain when you shift from problem-focused thinking to solution-focused thinking. Chapter 1, The Mental Trap That Keeps You Stuck. Your brain is doing something right now that you probably don't even notice. Something automatic. Something that happens so fast you don't have time to catch it. The moment a problem appears in your life, even a small one, your brain launches into detective mode. It starts searching, analyzing, scanning for danger. This happens before you can think logically, before calm reasoning has a chance to show up. Your brain is already asking questions. Why did this happen? How bad is this? What if it gets worse? Now, here's what's interesting, my friend. These questions seem reasonable, don't they? After all, you're trying to understand a situation, but something subtle happens when your mind stays in these questions too long. It stops trying to move forward. Instead, it starts circling. around and around the same problem, like a dog chasing its tail. Psychologists have a word for this. They call it rumination. Rumination is when your mind repeatedly returns to the same thoughts, searching for answers that don't actually help anymore. You're not solving anything. You're just replaying the problem on repeat. And here's the tricky part. Rumination feels productive. It feels like you're working on the problem, but really, you're just feeding it, making it grow larger in your mind. Let me ask you something. Have you ever lain awake at night thinking about a problem, going over it again and again, imagining different scenarios, playing out conversations that haven't happened? How did that feel? Did it solve the problem, or did it just make you exhausted? I'm guessing exhausted. That's rumination, and it drains your mental energy faster than almost anything else. But here's the really important part, my friend. Your brain isn't doing this to hurt you. Actually, it's trying to protect you. See, thousands of years ago, your ancestors lived in genuinely dangerous environments, real threats, predators, hostile tribes, natural disasters. For them, paying obsessive attention to potential threats was literally life-saving. If something looked dangerous, the brain needed to analyze it immediately. What is it? Is it a threat? How do I avoid it? The human brain became extremely skilled at detecting problems, so skilled that it still operates this way today. Even when the threat is just a difficult conversation you need to have, or a deadline at work, or a financial worry, your brain treats it like a lion in the grass, and it reacts accordingly. The problem grows enormous in your mind. A small difficulty feels massive. A temporary setback feels permanent. And the longer your attention stays fixed on the problem, the more powerless you begin to feel. But here's the good news, my friend, and please really hear this. You can train your brain to respond differently. Your mind doesn't have to stay stuck in this ancient pattern. You can teach it to move in a new direction. How? By understanding one crucial principle. Attention is a limited resource. Where you invest it determines what grows in your life. Let me say that visually. Imagine your mind is a garden. Whatever you water grows. Whatever you ignore withers. If you water the problem, if you give it your attention day after day, it grows into something that takes over the entire garden. But if you water possibilities, if you give your attention to solutions and actions, those begin to grow instead. The problem doesn't magically disappear, but it stops being the only thing in your garden. Think about someone you know who handles stress really well. Someone who stays calm when things go wrong. They're not experiencing fewer problems than you. I promise you that. They're just placing their attention differently. When a problem shows up, they acknowledge it quickly. Okay, this happened. But then they refuse to set up camp there. They don't move in mentally. Instead, they ask a different question. And this question is so powerful, I want you to memorize it. What's the next thing I can actually do? Not the perfect solution, not the complete answer, just the next possible step. Maybe that step is small. Maybe it's just gathering information. Maybe it's asking for help. Maybe it's trying one approach to see what happens. But that question breaks the rumination cycle. It shifts your brain from analysis paralysis to forward movement. And forward movement, even tiny forward movement, activates a completely different mental state. Fear starts to fade. curiosity emerges. Focus replaces panic. Movement replaces paralysis. Let me give you a real example of this. Imagine you just got some unexpected bad news about your finances. An unexpected expense, a bill you forgot about, something that throws off your budget. Your brain's first reaction? Panic. Oh no, how am I going to handle this? I don't have enough money. What if I can't pay rent? What if things get worse? That's the rumination starting. And if you follow that mental path, you'll spend the next hour, maybe the next day, spiraling deeper into worry. But what if, right after that first wave of panic, you asked, okay, what's one thing I can do about this right now? Suddenly, your mind shifts. I could look at my budget and see what I can adjust. I could reach out to the company and ask about a payment plan. I could pick up an extra shift. I could sell something I don't need. None of these solve everything instantly, but each one is a real action, a real step. And taking even one of those steps does something powerful to your nervous system. It sends a signal. I'm not helpless. I'm doing something. That signal matters more than you realize, my friend, because helplessness is what breaks people, not the problem itself. The feeling that nothing they do will make a difference. But action, even small action, restores your sense of agency. It reminds you that you have some power in the situation. And once you feel even a little bit of power, hope begins to return. Now, I want to be really clear about something. I'm not saying problems aren't real. I'm not suggesting you can just think positively and everything works out. Some problems are genuinely hard. Some challenges are legitimately difficult. What I'm saying is this. Even with real difficult problems, you get to choose where your mind lives. You can live in the problem, replaying it, worrying about it, feeling trapped by it. Or you can live in possibility, searching for options, trying approaches, learning as you go. Both involve facing the same reality, but the experience is completely different. One leaves you depleted. The other keeps you engaged. One makes you feel powerless. The other keeps you moving. And my friend, movement is everything. Because here's the truth about most problems. They don't get solved all at once. They get solved through a series of small steps, adjustments, experiments, and corrections. You try something, you learn from it, you adjust, you try again. That's how real progress happens. Not through perfect plans, through movement and adaptation. But you can't move if your mind is stuck circling the problem. So the first skill, the foundation of everything else, is learning to catch yourself when rumination starts. You'll feel it, that heaviness, that spinning feeling in your thoughts, that sense of going over the same ground again and again. When you notice it, and you will get better at noticing it, you have a choice. You can stay there, or you can gently redirect. Okay, my mind is circling. What's one thing I can do instead? That's it. That's the practice. Not perfection, not eliminating all worry, just noticing and redirecting. Over time, this small practice creates a massive shift. Your mind learns that problems aren't where you have to live. They're just information, data about what needs attention. And once you see problems as information instead of identity, everything changes. You stop taking setbacks personally. You stop seeing challenges as proof of your inadequacy. Instead, you start seeing them as feedback, as guidance, as part of the process of building the life you want. And my friend, that shift in perspective, That's where your power lives. Chapter 2. Why your brain automatically focuses on problems. Now let me tell you something fascinating about your brain that explains so much about why this is hard. Your brain has what scientists call a negativity bias. This means your mind is naturally wired to notice, remember, and react more strongly to negative things than positive things. It's not a flaw. It's not you being pessimistic. It's how human brains evolved to keep you alive. Think about it like this. Imagine your ancestor 10,000 years ago walking through the forest. They see beautiful flowers. Nice. They see a stream. Great. But then they see a snake. Which one does their brain need to focus on immediately? The flowers or the snake? The snake, obviously, because noticing beautiful things is pleasant, but noticing threats is survival. So over thousands of generations, the human brain became incredibly good at one thing: detecting danger. It scans for threats. It notices what's wrong. It pays attention to what could go badly. And even today, thousands of years later, living in relative safety, your brain still operates this way. You can receive 10 compliments in a day. But one criticism? That's what you'll think about tonight. You can have 9 things go right. But the one thing that went wrong? That's what dominates your thoughts. This isn't weakness, my friend. This is your ancient survival system still running in the background. But here's the problem with this system in modern life. Most of the things your brain treats as threats aren't actually dangerous. They're just uncomfortable, challenging, uncertain. A difficult conversation isn't a predator. A financial worry isn't a physical threat. A mistake at work isn't life or death. But your brain can react as if they are. And when it does, something interesting happens. Your brain doesn't just notice the problem, it starts building a story around it. One mistake becomes, I always mess things up. One rejection becomes, nobody values me. One setback becomes, nothing ever works out for me. See what happened there? The brain took one event and connected it to your entire identity, to your past, to your future. And suddenly, what was one difficulty has become this massive narrative about who you are and what your life is like. This is what negativity bias does when left unchecked. It doesn't just notice problems, it magnifies them, connects them, builds them into something much larger than they actually are. And the more you believe that larger story, the more evidence your brain finds to support it. This is called confirmation bias. Your brain looks for proof of what you already believe. If you believe you're unlucky, you'll notice every time something goes wrong and overlook every time something goes right. If you believe you can't handle stress, you'll remember every time you struggled and forget every time you managed just fine. Your brain isn't trying to lie to you. It's just showing you what you're tuned into. And if you're tuned into problems, that's what you'll see everywhere. But here's the empowering part, my friend. You can retune your brain. Remember, your brain is adaptable. It changes based on what you practice. Scientists call this neuroplasticity. And one of the most powerful practices you can develop is learning to interrupt your brain's first reaction. Your brain's first interpretation of a difficult situation is usually emotional, fast, automatic, often exaggerated. But your second interpretation can be intelligent, thoughtful, accurate. The key is creating a gap between the event and your interpretation of it. Something happens. Your brain fires off its automatic reaction, but before you accept that reaction as truth, you pause, you breathe, you create just a moment of space. And in that space, you ask, is this actually as bad as it feels? Or is my brain just doing its threat detection thing? That question is so powerful because most of the time, when you look at the situation calmly, it's not as catastrophic as your brain's first alarm suggested. It's just a problem, a challenge, something that needs attention, not a disaster, not the end, not proof of your inadequacy, just a situation that requires a response. And once you see it that clearly, your intelligent mind can engage. Instead of asking, why is this terrible? You can ask, what exactly happened? What can I control here? What's my next step? These questions activate a different part of your brain, the part responsible for reasoning, planning, problem solving. And when that part comes online, the emotional alarm starts to quiet down. You move from reactive to responsive, from panicked to purposeful. This doesn't mean you won't feel stress or worry. You're human. Those feelings will come, but they don't have to run the show. You can feel the worry and still choose where to place your attention. You can acknowledge the stress and still ask productive questions. You can notice the fear and still take the next step forward. My friend, this is what it means to work with your brain instead of being controlled by it. You're not fighting against your negativity bias. You're just not letting it write the whole story. You're saying, yes, I see the problem. Thank you, brain, for alerting me. Now let me actually think about this. And when you practice this, when you create that pause, that space, that second look, something remarkable starts to happen. Problems stop feeling like emergencies. They start feeling like information. Challenges stop feeling like threats. They start feeling like puzzles. And my friend, puzzles are something your mind knows how to work with. Because when you approach something as a puzzle, curiosity shows up. And curiosity is far more useful than fear. So let me give you a practice you can start today. The next time something goes wrong, the next time you feel that spike of stress or worry, try this. Pause. Take one slow breath. Then say to yourself, this is my brain's first reaction. Let me take a second look. Then ask, what's actually happening here? What facts do I know for sure? Strip away the story. Strip away the predictions. Just look at what's real right now. Then ask, what's one small thing I can do about this? That's it. That's the practice. Pause. Second look. Next step. Do this enough times and I promise you, your brain starts to change. The automatic panic starts to soften. The catastrophic thinking starts to quiet. And in its place, something steadier emerges. A mind that can face difficulty without being consumed by it. A mind that can notice problems without living inside them. A mind that moves towards solutions instead of drowning in fear. My friend, that mind is already inside you. You're just learning how to use it. Chapter 3. Calm minds solve problems faster than smart minds. Hey, my friend, let me ask you something. When you think about the smartest person you know, do you also think of them as the calmest person you know? Probably not, right? We tend to think intelligence and composure are separate things. Like you can be smart but anxious, brilliant but reactive, genius but chaotic. And sure, that's possible. But here's something I've observed that completely changed how I think about problem solving. When pressure rises, intelligence alone isn't enough. In fact, intelligence can actually work against you if you're not calm. Let me explain what I mean. Your brain has different systems running at the same time. There's the emotional system, the part that reacts fast, feels intensely, and prioritizes survival. And there's the logical system, the part that thinks, plans, analyzes, and solves problems. Under normal conditions, both systems work together pretty well. But when stress hits, when panic arrives, something fascinating and kind of terrifying happens. The emotional system takes over. It hijacks the whole operation. Psychologists call this an amygdala hijack. The amygdala is this small part of your brain responsible for processing emotions, especially fear. When it perceives a threat, real or imagined, it basically hits the emergency alarm. Your body tenses up. Your breathing gets shallow and fast. Your heart races. Your attention narrows to a tunnel. And here's the critical part. The logical, problem-solving part of your brain starts to shut down. Not completely, but significantly. Because in true life or death situations, your ancestors didn't need logic. They needed speed. Fight, run, or freeze now. If a wild animal appeared, there was no time for careful analysis. The body needed to react immediately, and that system saved countless lives over thousands of years. But here's the problem, my friend. In modern life, most of what triggers stress isn't a physical threat. It's mental, emotional, social, a looming deadline, a difficult conversation, a financial worry, a complex decision, a relationship conflict. These situations don't require you to run or fight. They require you to think clearly. But when panic takes over, clear thinking becomes almost impossible. And this is where something ironic happens. Even extremely intelligent people can make terrible decisions when they're panicked. You've probably seen this. Maybe you've experienced it yourself. Someone brilliant, capable, experienced, but in a high-stress moment, they freeze, or they make an impulsive choice they later regret, or they react emotionally in a way that makes everything worse. It's not because they're not smart. It's because their intelligence can't function properly through the fog of panic. Calmness isn't just nice to have. It's the foundation that allows intelligence to work. Let me give you an example of what this looks like in real life. Imagine a team facing a serious technical crisis. A system has failed. Clients are affected. Money is being lost every minute this isn't fixed. Everyone knows the stakes are high. At first, people try to stay composed, but as the minutes tick by and the pressure mounts, voices start getting louder. People talk faster. Ideas start competing. Everyone's trying to solve the problem at once, and ironically, the more everyone rushes to think quickly, the more confused everything becomes. Information gets missed. Communication breaks down. People start working against each other instead of together. The room feels chaotic, stressful, overwhelming. Now imagine one person in that room does something different. They don't join the frenzy. They don't raise their voice. They don't try to compete with the noise. Instead, they lean back. They take a breath. They observe for a moment. Then, when there's a brief pause, they speak calmly, clearly. Let's slow down for a second. What's the first thing we actually need to fix? Watch what happens in that room. The chaos starts to settle. People stop talking over each other. Attention focuses. Suddenly, instead of 12 people trying to solve everything at once, you have 12 people looking at one specific problem. Clarity returns. Solutions start emerging. What changed? The problem is still the same. The pressure is still there. But one person's calmness created space for everyone's intelligence to actually function. This is the power of a calm mind, my friend. It's not that calm people don't feel stress. They do. It's not that they don't recognize urgency. They absolutely do. But they understand something crucial. Rushing your thinking doesn't make you faster. It makes you sloppy. When your mind is racing, you miss details. You overlook options. You make assumptions that turn out to be wrong. But when you slow down, even just slightly, your brain can actually process information effectively. You see patterns you would have missed. You notice solutions that weren't visible through the panic. You make connections that lead to breakthroughs. Think about water for a moment. When water is disturbed, when it's churning and chaotic, the surface is murky. You can't see through it. You can't see what's beneath. But when water becomes still, everything becomes visible, clear, obvious. Your mind works the same way. When your thoughts are racing and your emotions are intense, your perception gets distorted. Everything looks more complicated than it is. But when your mind becomes still, calm, settled, patterns emerge. The path forward reveals itself. This is why experienced leaders often seem unusually composed in crisis moments. It's not that they're emotionless. It's not that they don't care. It's that they've learned, often through painful experience, that panic doesn't improve anything. They've discovered that staying calm is not a personality trait. It's a trained response. And my friend, this is so important. You can train this. Some people develop calmness through experience. After facing enough high-pressure situations, they learn what works and what doesn't. But you don't have to wait for a crisis to build this skill. You can practice it intentionally. How? By learning to pause before reacting, by practicing slow breathing during stressful moments, by developing the habit of asking questions instead of making immediate judgments. Let me give you something practical you can use right now. The next time you feel stress rising, the next time pressure starts building, try this, the 3-breath reset. Stop whatever you're doing, just for a moment. Take one slow breath in. Count to 4 as you breathe in. Hold for a moment. Then breathe out slowly. Count to 6. Do this 3 times. That's it. 15 to 20 seconds total. You know what happens in those 20 seconds? You interrupt the panic response. You signal to your nervous system that you're not in immediate danger. You create just enough space for your logical brain to come back online, and from that place of relative calm, you can ask better questions. Instead of, "Oh no, what do I do?" you can ask, "What exactly is happening here?" Instead of, "This is a disaster," you can ask, "What's the most important thing to address first?" Instead of, "I can't handle this," you can ask, "What resources do I have available?" See the difference? Same situation, same pressure, but completely different quality of thinking. And here's something really interesting about calmness, my friend. It's contagious. Just like panic spreads through a group, calmness spreads too. When one person remains composed during a stressful moment, others start to relax as well. Have you ever noticed this? You're feeling anxious about something, and then you talk to someone who's calm about it, and somehow you feel a little calmer too. That's not coincidence. That's emotional regulation happening between people. This is why leadership often comes down to emotional management. Not managing other people's emotions directly, but managing your own emotions in a way that creates a calmer environment for everyone. The calmest person in the room often sets the emotional tone for the entire group. And once calmness enters a situation, clear thinking becomes possible. People can hear each other. They can process information. They can collaborate instead of compete. Problems that felt impossible start looking solvable. Now, I want to be clear about something. Being calm doesn't mean being slow. It doesn't mean taking forever to make decisions. Sometimes you need to move fast. Absolutely. But there's a huge difference between moving fast with clarity and moving fast with chaos, calm urgency. That's what you're aiming for. You recognize the urgency, you move with purpose, but you maintain enough composure to think straight. This is what separates good decision makers from great ones. Good decision makers are smart. Great decision makers are smart and calm. Good decision makers know a lot. Great decision makers can access what they know even under pressure. Good decision makers work hard. Great decision makers work effectively because their minds stay clear. And my friend, you can become this person. You can train your nervous system to stay steadier during stress. You can practice pausing before reacting. You can develop the habit of taking those 3 breaths before responding to something that triggers you. Over time, this becomes automatic. Your default response to stress shifts from panic to pause, from reaction to response. And when that shift happens, you'll notice something remarkable. Situations that used to overwhelm you don't hit the same way anymore, not because they're less difficult, but because you're more capable. Your mind has learned to stay online even when things get hard. And that, my friend, is one of the most valuable skills you can ever develop. Because in the end, life doesn't reward the fastest thinker or even the smartest thinker. Life rewards the clearest thinker. And clarity comes from calmness. Chapter 4. The shift that turns every problem into information. Okay, my friend, now I want to share something with you that might sound strange at first, but once you really get this, it changes your entire relationship with difficulty. Here it is. Every problem is actually just information in disguise. I know. When you're in the middle of something hard, when something just went wrong, when you're dealing with a real challenge, this might sound like some kind of annoying positive thinking nonsense. But stay with me, because this isn't about pretending problems don't hurt or that difficulties aren't real. This is about something much more powerful. Let me explain by asking you a question. When something goes wrong in your life, what's your first reaction? For most people, including me for a long time, the first reaction is emotional. Frustration, disappointment, anger, worry, sometimes even shame or embarrassment. And underneath all those emotions is usually some version of these thoughts. This shouldn't have happened. This is bad. This is a setback. Why me? The problem feels personal. It feels like something happening to you, something working against you. And when you see problems that way, they feel heavy, burdensome, like obstacles blocking your path. But what if there's another way to see the same situation? What if, instead of seeing problems as personal attacks or failures, you started seeing them as data, as feedback about what's working and what's not, as information about what needs to adjust? I know this sounds different, so let me show you what I mean with a real example. Imagine you're trying to build something, doesn't matter what, a business, a skill, a relationship, a healthier lifestyle, something that matters to you, and you try an approach. You put in effort, you invest time, you really commit to it, and then it doesn't work. Maybe people don't respond the way you hoped. Maybe the results aren't what you expected. Maybe you realize you missed something important. Your first reaction? Probably disappointment. Maybe even defeat. All that work for nothing. I failed. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. That's the emotional response, and it's natural. It's human. But watch what happens if you add just one more step. After you feel that initial disappointment, you ask yourself, okay, what is this situation trying to teach me? Suddenly, you're looking at the same experience through a different lens. You're not asking, why did this happen to me? You're asking, what can I learn from this? And when you ask that question, genuinely really search for an answer, things start appearing. Oh, I assumed people wanted X, but actually they need Y. I overlooked this part of the process. My timing was off. I need to develop this skill more. I was solving the wrong problem. See what just happened? The failure didn't disappear. It's still the same outcome. But instead of being a dead end, it became a teacher. It showed you something you didn't know before. It revealed gaps in your understanding. It pointed you toward what needs to change. And that information, that's incredibly valuable. Because now you can adjust, adapt, try a different approach. You're not starting over from nothing. You're starting from knowledge. This is how scientists think, my friend. When a scientist runs an experiment and it doesn't produce the expected result, they don't call it a failure and give up. They call it data. Interesting. That approach didn't work. Now I know something I didn't know before. What does that tell me about the system I'm studying? Each unsuccessful attempt removes one incorrect possibility. Each failure narrows the search space, and slowly, through observation and adjustment, understanding emerges. Life works the exact same way. Every challenge reveals something about reality. Every obstacle contains clues about what needs to change. Every setback provides feedback about your approach. But those clues only become visible when your mind moves beyond the emotional reaction. And this is why calmness, which we just talked about, matters so much. Without calmness, all you see is frustration. All you feel is defeat. But with calmness, with a little bit of distance from the immediate emotion, you can start to see patterns. And patterns reveal direction. Let me give you another example, something more personal. Imagine you're working on improving a relationship, maybe with a partner, a family member, a friend, and you try something new, a different way of communicating, a new approach to handling conflict, and it doesn't go well. Maybe the other person reacts defensively. Maybe the conversation gets more tense instead of less. Your emotional brain says, see, nothing works. This relationship is broken. I give up. But what if you paused and asked, what information did I just get? Maybe you learned that your timing was off, or that your tone triggered something, or that there's a deeper issue underneath that needs to be addressed first. That's not failure. That's feedback. And feedback, when you actually use it, is how relationships improve. You try something, you observe what happens, you adjust, you try again. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but progressively. This is true for literally everything in life, my friend. Career growth, skill development, health and fitness, creative projects, financial management. Everything involves trying, observing, adjusting, and trying again. But this process only works if you can shift from seeing problems as failures to seeing them as information. And here's something really interesting that happens when you make that shift. Fear starts to shrink. Why? Because information isn't scary. Information is useful. When a difficulty becomes data, it loses some of its emotional weight. It's no longer this terrible thing happening to you. It's just part of a process, part of learning, part of growth. You stop taking setbacks personally. One rough day doesn't mean your life is falling apart. It means you need to adjust something. One mistake doesn't mean you're incompetent. It means you're learning. One rejection doesn't mean you're not good enough. It means this particular fit wasn't right. See how different that feels? Same events, completely different interpretation. And interpretation matters, my friend. It matters so much. Because your interpretation determines your response. If you interpret a problem as a personal failure, you'll probably withdraw, shut down, maybe give up. But if you interpret it as information, as feedback, you'll stay engaged. You'll stay curious. You'll keep moving. And movement is everything. Because here's the truth about progress. It's never a straight line. Nobody succeeds by doing everything right the first time. Nobody grows without stumbling. Nobody builds anything meaningful without facing obstacles. The people who succeed aren't the ones who avoid problems. They're the ones who use problems. They extract the lesson. They gather the information. They make the adjustment. And they keep moving. Over time, all those adjustments add up to something powerful. Not just success in whatever they're pursuing, but wisdom. Because wisdom isn't just knowledge, my friend. Wisdom is the ability to interpret experience correctly. It's knowing how to look at a situation and see what it's really telling you. It's being able to separate the useful signal from the emotional noise. And the people who develop this ability reach a surprising realization. Every obstacle carries two possibilities. It can either become a reason to stop, or it can become information that shows the way forward. Which one it becomes depends entirely on how you choose to see it. And that choice, that's always yours. Nobody can take that from you. Circumstances can be difficult. Other people can be challenging. Life can throw curveballs. But how you interpret what happens, that's your domain. That's your power. So let me give you a practice for this. The next time something doesn't go the way you hoped, the next time you face a setback or a disappointment, try this. Feel the emotion. Don't skip it. Disappointment is real. Frustration is valid. But then, after you've felt it, ask yourself, what information am I getting from this? What is this situation trying to show me? Maybe the answer comes immediately. Maybe it takes a few days of reflection. But ask the question. Keep asking it, because I promise you, there's always something to learn. Always some adjustment that can be made. Always some new understanding that can be gained. And when you collect enough of those learnings, enough of those adjustments, enough of that understanding, something incredible happens. You stop fearing problems, not because you enjoy them, but because you trust yourself to learn from them. You know that even if something doesn't work out, you'll figure out what to do next. You know that setbacks aren't endpoints, they're waypoints. And my friend, when you reach that level of trust in yourself, in your ability to adapt and learn and grow, life becomes so much lighter. Problems lose their power to crush you because they're not crushing defeats anymore. They're just information. And information, you know how to use that. Chapter 5. The Stoic Rule. Focus only on what you can control. Hey, my friend, let me tell you about one of the most liberating ideas I've ever encountered. It's simple, almost too simple. But when you really understand it, when you actually apply it to your life, it changes everything. Here it is. Most of what you worry about is outside your control. And worrying about it doesn't change it. I know. You've probably heard something like this before. Don't worry about what you can't control. It sounds obvious, right? Maybe even a little dismissive. But stay with me, because there's a depth to this idea that most people never explore. And when you do explore it, when you really live it, you discover something remarkable. You have way more power than you think. You're just directing it at the wrong things. Let me explain what I mean. Think about everything you worried about yesterday or this past week. Really think about it for a moment. How many of those worries were about things you could actually directly influence? And how many were about things completely outside your control? Other people's opinions, past mistakes, future uncertainties, economic conditions, what might happen, what someone else might do, how things might turn out. If you're honest, probably most of your mental energy went to things in that second category, things you cannot control. And here's what's fascinating and kind of heartbreaking about this. All that worry, all that mental effort, all that stress, it doesn't change any of those things. You can spend 3 hours worrying about whether someone is upset with you. It won't change whether they're upset. You can replay a past mistake 1,000 times in your mind. It won't change what happened. You can imagine every possible future disaster. It won't prevent a single one of them. All that worry does is drain your energy, exhaust your mind, and distract you from the things you actually can influence. Now, thousands of years ago, Stoic philosophers noticed this exact pattern in human behavior. They watched people suffer, not primarily because of events themselves, but because of how they thought about those events. So they developed a principle that's just as relevant today as it was back then. They called it the dichotomy of control. Fancy name for a simple idea. Some things are within your control. Other things are not. Wisdom begins when you learn to separate the two. And peace begins when you focus your energy only on the first category. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Imagine you're facing a difficult situation. Maybe a work project that's not going well. There are things about this situation you cannot control. Your boss's mood, the decisions other team members made before you got involved, market conditions affecting the project, how much time you have, the resources available, company politics, what happened in the past. And there are things you can control. Your effort today, your attitude toward the challenge, who you ask for help, what you learn from this, your next action, how you communicate, the quality of your work. Most people, when facing this situation, spend the majority of their mental energy in the first category. Why did they make that decision? If only we had more time. This isn't fair. What if my boss thinks I'm incompetent? Why didn't anyone plan this better? Round and round, hours of mental effort, and none of it changes the situation. But imagine if you took all that same mental energy and directed it toward the second category instead. What can I do with the time I have? Who could help me? What's the smartest way to approach this? What can I learn from this challenge? Same amount of mental effort, but now it's focused on things you can actually influence. And when your energy goes there, something powerful happens. Progress becomes possible because action always exists inside the circle of what you can control. You can't control outcomes, but you can control effort. You can't control other people, but you can control your response to them. You can't control the past, but you can control what you do right now. And my friend, right now is where all your power lives. Let me give you a more personal example. Imagine you're dealing with a health issue, something chronic or ongoing. There are aspects you cannot control. The fact that this condition exists, how it developed genetic factors, what happened before you knew about it, how quickly it might improve. And there are aspects you can control, whether you follow treatment recommendations, your daily habits, what you eat, how much you sleep, whether you ask questions and advocate for yourself, your mindset while dealing with it, whether you seek support. Now, you could spend your energy being angry that you have this condition, dwelling on how unfair it is, imagining worst-case scenarios, resenting that other people don't have to deal with this. And that's natural. That's human. Those feelings will come. But if you stay in those feelings, if you live there mentally, what changes? Nothing about the condition. But your emotional state gets worse. Your stress increases. And stress often makes health conditions worse. Or you could acknowledge those feelings when they arise, let them pass through, and then redirect your energy toward what you can actually control. Your daily choices, your self-care, your treatment, your support system. When your energy goes there, you might not control the outcome completely, but you're doing everything within your power, and there's something deeply peaceful about that, my friend. Not because the situation is easy, but because you're no longer fighting reality. You're working with it. The Stoics had a beautiful way of describing this. They said, you should be like a rock in the ocean. The waves keep coming. You can't stop them. You can't control them. But you can remain steady, unmoved, grounded. The waves crash against you, but they don't determine who you are or how you stand. That's what focusing on what you can control feels like. The circumstances keep coming. The challenges keep appearing. The uncertainties remain. But you stay focused on your response, your choices, your actions. And over time, this focus creates something remarkable, emotional resilience. Because anxiety often comes from trying to control what can't be controlled. Think about it. When do you feel most anxious? Usually when you're worrying about something uncertain, something outside your direct influence. What if they reject me? What if this doesn't work out? What if I fail? What if something bad happens? All these questions are about things you cannot control, and as long as your mind is locked onto those questions, anxiety has fuel. But when you shift to controllable factors, anxiety starts to lose its grip. Instead of, what if they reject me? You ask, did I put my best effort into this? Instead of, what if this doesn't work? You ask, what can I do to give this the best chance? Instead of, what if I fail? You ask, what will I learn from trying? See the shift? You're not ignoring the possibility of negative outcomes. You're just not letting those possibilities consume your mental energy. You're placing your attention where it can actually do something. And attention, my friend, is a limited resource. Every moment you spend worrying about what you can't control is a moment you're not investing in what you can control. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it. The effort is real, but it's not getting you anywhere. Now, let me be really clear about something important. Focusing on what you can control doesn't mean you stop caring about outcomes. It doesn't mean you become passive or resigned. It doesn't mean you don't try to influence things or advocate for change. What it means is this. You do everything within your power. You give your best effort. You make your case. You take your shot. And then you accept that the final outcome isn't entirely up to you. You control the input. The universe handles the output. This distinction is crucial because a lot of people here focus on what you can control and think it means don't try to change things. No, not at all. You absolutely try. You absolutely make effort. You absolutely work toward what you want. But you don't torture yourself over the parts that aren't in your hands. You do your part, fully, completely, with everything you've got. And then you make peace with the fact that you've done what you can do. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic thinkers, wrote something beautiful about this. He said that we can't control external events, but we can always control our judgment about them. What does that mean practically? It means you can't control if it rains on your wedding day, but you can control whether you let that ruin the entire experience. You can't control if someone criticizes you, but you can control whether you take it as useful feedback or as a personal attack. You can't control if a plan falls through, but you can control whether you see it as the end or as a new beginning. The event is what it is. But your interpretation? That's always your choice, and your interpretation shapes your experience far more than the event itself. Two people can go through the exact same difficulty and have completely different experiences based solely on how they frame it. One sees tragedy, the other sees a challenge. One sees injustice. The other sees an opportunity to adapt. One feels defeated. The other feels determined. Same event. Different interpretation. Different experience. And my friend, this is where your true power lives. Not in controlling what happens to you, but in controlling how you meet what happens. So let me give you a practice that can transform how you handle stress. When you notice yourself worrying, when you feel anxiety building, ask yourself this question. Is this within my control? If yes, great. Take action. Do something about it. If no, then ask, what part of this situation is within my control? Maybe you can't control the whole thing, but there's almost always something you can influence. Your preparation, your response, your attitude, your next step. Focus your energy there. And when you find yourself spinning in worry about the uncontrollable parts, notice it. Gently redirect. This is outside my control. What can I control right now? Do this consistently, and something shifts. Your mind learns to conserve energy, to invest it wisely, to focus where it matters. And over time, you discover something beautiful. Peace doesn't come from controlling everything around you. Peace comes from knowing what's yours to control and what isn't. And when you know that, really know it deep in your bones, life gets so much lighter because you stop carrying weight that was never yours to carry in the first place. Chapter 6: The Problem-Solving Framework Used by High Performers. All right, my friend, now I want to share something practical with you. Something you can actually use the next time you're facing a complex problem. Because here's what I've noticed. When you watch people who are really good at solving problems, people who stay effective even when things get complicated, it often looks like magic. Like they just naturally know what to do. Like they think faster than everyone else. But that's not what's actually happening. They're not thinking faster, they're thinking more clearly. And one of the reasons they think more clearly is because they use structure. Let me explain what I mean. Most people, when they face a problem, approach it chaotically. Their mind jumps around. They think about the problem from different angles. They imagine various solutions. They worry about different outcomes. All at the same time, it's like trying to juggle 10 balls while riding a unicycle. Even if you're talented, it's overwhelming. But experienced problem solvers do something different. They break the chaos into steps. They give their thinking a structure to follow. And structure does something powerful. It turns complexity into clarity. Because when you have a framework, a complex problem stops being one giant overwhelming thing. It becomes a series of smaller, more manageable questions. Let me walk you through a framework that high performers use, often without even realizing they're using it. It has 5 steps, 5 questions really, and these questions work for almost any problem you face. Step 1. What exactly is happening here? Not your interpretation, not your assumptions, not your fears, just the facts. This step alone removes a surprising amount of confusion, because when people are stressed, they tend to exaggerate. The situation feels bigger than it is, more urgent, more catastrophic. But when you separate facts from feelings, the problem often shrinks. I might lose my job becomes my boss gave me critical feedback. This relationship is falling apart becomes we had a difficult conversation. Everything's going wrong becomes 2 things didn't work out this week. See the difference? The facts are much more manageable than the story your mind created around them. So step 1 is always get clear on what's actually happening. Step 2, what's the real problem here? This question is sneaky, because often the obvious problem isn't the real problem. You think you have a time problem, but really you have a priority problem. You think you have a money problem, but really you have a spending habits problem. You think you have a communication problem with someone, but really you have an unspoken expectations problem. The surface issue is visible, but underneath there's usually a core issue. And if you solve the surface issue without addressing the core, the problem just comes back. Imagine A. Team keeps missing deadlines. The obvious problem, not enough time. So you extend the deadlines. But they still miss them. Why? Because the real problem might be unclear expectations, or poor communication, or people being afraid to ask for help. Until you identify the actual core issue, you're just treating symptoms. So step 2, dig beneath the surface. Find the real problem. Step 3, break it into smaller pieces. Big problems feel overwhelming because they appear as one massive challenge. But almost every big problem can be divided into smaller parts, and smaller parts are manageable. Instead of, how do I fix this entire mess, you ask, what's the first small piece I can address? Then, what's the next piece? Then, what's the piece after that? Suddenly, you're not staring at a mountain. You're looking at steps. And steps can be climbed, one at a time. This is how anything big gets accomplished, my friend. Writing a book? One page at a time. Building a business? One customer at a time. Improving a relationship? One conversation at a time. Getting healthier? One choice at a time. Break it down. Make it small. Make it doable. Step 4. What are my options? Now that you know what the real problem is and you've broken it into pieces, it's time to explore solutions. And here's where creativity helps. Don't just go with your first idea. Consider multiple possibilities. What's the obvious solution? What's the unconventional solution? What would you do if money wasn't an issue? What would you do if time wasn't an issue? What would you do if you weren't afraid? Sometimes the best answer isn't the most obvious one. Sometimes it's the option you almost didn't consider because it seemed too simple or too bold or too different from what you've tried before. So step 4 is about generating options, exploring different paths, staying open to possibilities. Step 5, take action. This is where everything comes together. You can have perfect clarity, perfect analysis, perfect options. But none of it matters if you don't actually do something. Action is the bridge between thinking and results. And here's the thing about action. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be something. Because action creates feedback. And feedback creates learning. And learning leads to better decisions. You try something. You see what happens. You adjust based on what you learn. That's the process. Not perfection on the first try. Progress through experimentation. So step 5, choose one action and take it. Even if it's small, even if you're not sure it's the right move. Movement creates momentum, and momentum changes everything. Now let me show you what this framework looks like in practice. Imagine you're struggling financially. Money is tight. Bills are piling up. You're stressed. Step 1. What exactly is happening? Facts. I spent $500 more than I earned last month. I have $200 in savings. I have 3 bills due next week, totaling $350. Not, I'm terrible with money, or I'll never get ahead, or everything is falling apart. Just facts. Step 2. What's the real problem? Surface problem, not enough money. Real problem, spending more than I earn consistently. Or maybe not tracking expenses so I don't see where money goes. Step 3. Break it into pieces. Immediate piece, cover next week's bills. Short-term piece, stop spending more than I earn this month. Medium-term piece, build a small emergency fund. Long-term piece, develop sustainable money habits. Step 4. What are my options? For covering bills, pick up extra hours, sell something, ask about payment plans, borrow from a friend, and pay back next month. For stopping overspending, track every expense, create a simple budget, cut one non-essential expense, find one way to earn more. Step 5. Take action. Today, call about payment plan for one bill, list something to sell online. This week, start tracking every expense in a notes app. Next week, review spending and identify one thing to cut. See how that works? The same overwhelming problem becomes a series of clear steps, and each step is doable. This framework works for relationship problems, career challenges, health goals, creative projects, anything. The power isn't in the complexity of the framework. It's in the clarity it creates. Because structure prevents your mind from spinning. Instead of trying to solve everything at once, you have a path to follow. Understand a situation. Find the real problem. Break it down. Explore options. Take action. That's it. And here's something interesting about this approach. It also protects your emotional stability. When you have a process you trust, uncertainty feels less threatening. You might not know the solution yet, but you know how to find it. You have a way to think through it, a method for moving forward. And that creates confidence, not arrogance, not overconfidence, just a quiet trust that even when you don't have all the answers, you have a way to work toward them. This is why experienced leaders often appear so composed under pressure. It's not that they know everything, it's that they trust their process. They know that complexity can be broken down, that problems can be examined, that solutions can be discovered step by step. And my friend, you can develop this same trust, not by knowing everything in advance, but by practicing structured thinking. The next time you face something complex, try this framework. Don't skip steps. Move through them one at a time. What's happening? What's the real issue? What are the pieces? What are my options? What action can I take? At first, it might feel mechanical. That's okay. With practice, it becomes natural. And over time, you'll notice something shift. Problems stop looking like walls. They start looking like puzzles. And puzzles, my friend, those are something your mind knows how to solve. Chapter 7. Training your brain to automatically look for solutions. Hey, my friend, let me tell you something that might surprise you. The way you think right now, it's not permanent. I know it might feel like it is. Like your mindset is just part of who you are. Fixed. Unchangeable. Some people are naturally optimistic, others naturally anxious. Some are problem solvers, others are worriers. That's just how it is, right? Wrong. And this is one of the most empowering discoveries modern neuroscience has given us. Your brain is not fixed. It's adaptable. It changes based on how you use it. Scientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself, to form new neural connections, to literally reshape based on repeated patterns. And here's what this means for you. If you've spent years focusing on problems, if your mind automatically jumps to worst-case scenarios, if worry feels like your default setting, that's not because you're broken or flawed. It's because your brain has practiced those patterns so much, it's gotten really good at them. Your brain has built superhighways for worry, for problem detection, for seeing obstacles. But here's the beautiful truth. You can build new highways. You can train your brain to automatically look for solutions instead of dwelling on problems. You can develop new mental patterns that serve you better. And my friend, this isn't just theory. This is something you can actually do, starting today. Let me explain how this works. Every time you think a thought, your brain creates a tiny pathway, like a faint trail through a forest. The first time you walk that trail, it's hard. You have to push through brush, navigate around obstacles. It's slow going. But if you walk that same trail every day, something happens. The grass gets flattened, the path becomes clearer, walking it becomes easier. Eventually, that trail becomes so well worn, you can walk it without even thinking about it. Automatically. Your thought patterns work exactly the same way. When you repeatedly think in a certain way, your brain strengthens those neural pathways. If you always react to problems with, "Why me?" your brain builds a strong pathway for that response. If you always jump to worst-case scenarios when something goes wrong, your brain gets really efficient at catastrophic thinking. If you always look for someone to blame when things get difficult, your brain becomes excellent at finding fault. Not because you're a negative person, just because that's the mental trail you've walked most often. But here's the incredible part. You can create new trails anytime you want. You can build pathways for solution-focused thinking, for calm responses, for curiosity instead of panic. It takes practice. It takes repetition. But it absolutely works. And the tool that makes this possible? Questions. The questions you ask yourself shape where your attention goes. And where your attention goes determines what your brain gets good at noticing. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine two people face the exact same unexpected setback. Person one immediately asks, "Why does this always happen to me?" That question sends their brain searching through memory for evidence, times when things went wrong before, patterns of difficulty, proof that life is hard, and their brain, being the excellent pattern matcher it is, finds exactly what they're looking for. See, this happened last year too, and a year before. I always struggle with this stuff. Now their setback isn't just one event. It's part of their identity, part of their story, evidence of who they are. Person two faces the same setback but asks a different question. What opportunity might be hidden in this situation? That question sends their brain in a completely different direction. Instead of searching for evidence of victimhood, it searches for possibilities. Well, maybe this forces me to try that approach I've been curious about. Or maybe this opens up a different path I hadn't considered. Or maybe this is teaching me something I need to know. Same event. Completely different mental response. And over time, these different questions create different brains. Person one's brain becomes expert at finding problems, confirming patterns, and feeling stuck. Person two's brain becomes expert at finding possibilities, seeing opportunities, and moving forward, not because one person is better than the other, just because they practice different mental patterns. And my friend, you get to choose which patterns you practice, starting right now. One of the most powerful habits you can develop is the habit of asking better questions. When something goes wrong, when you face a challenge, when uncertainty appears, pause. Notice what question your mind automatically asks. Is it, "Why me?" Is it, "What if this gets worse?" Is it, "Who's to blame?" Just notice. No judgment. Just awareness. Then deliberately ask a different question. What can I learn from this? What's the opportunity here? What's one small step I can take? What would someone I admire do in this situation? These questions redirect your brain toward solutions instead of problems. At first, it might feel forced, unnatural. Your brain wants to go down the familiar trail. That's okay. That's normal. Just gently redirect, again and again. And here's what happens with repetition. The new trail starts getting clearer. The solution-focused pathway starts getting stronger. And eventually, your brain begins defaulting to that pathway instead of the old one. This is what I mean by training your brain. You're not fighting against your nature, you're creating a new nature. Let me give you another powerful practice, the daily problem-solving practice. Every day, intentionally look for small problems to solve, not massive life challenges, just tiny everyday problems. The coffee machine is slow. How could I speed up my morning routine? I keep forgetting to call someone back. What system could remind me? I feel sluggish in the afternoon. What small change might help my energy? These aren't earth-shattering problems, but that's the point. Every time you identify a small problem and find even a tiny solution, you're training your brain. You're teaching it. When I see a problem, I look for solutions. That's what I do. And your brain learns. It adapts. It gets better at this pattern. Over time, this practice creates a subtle but powerful shift in your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who struggles with problems. You start seeing yourself as someone who solves them. And identity matters more than most people realize, because the way you see yourself influences how you behave. If you believe you're not good under pressure, your brain will find evidence to support that belief. But if you believe you're someone who finds a way through challenges, your brain will find evidence for that instead. Both beliefs can be true, depending on which one you feed. So feed the belief that serves you. Another powerful element of brain training is celebrating small wins. Every time you successfully solve something, even something tiny, acknowledge it. Hey, I handled that well. I stayed calm when I could have panicked. I found a solution instead of just complaining. Why does this matter? Because your brain remembers success. And those memories build confidence. Confidence that you can handle difficulty, that you're capable, that problems aren't threats, they're puzzles. And when confidence grows, fear shrinks. You start approaching challenges differently. Instead of, oh no, another problem, you think, okay, let's figure this out. That shift is everything, my friend. Now, let me be honest with you about something. This training isn't instant. You don't rewire your brain overnight. It takes time, weeks, months, consistent practice. There will be days when you slip back into old patterns, when worry takes over, when you spiral into problem-focused thinking. That's normal. That's human. That's part of the process. The key is not perfection. It's direction. Are you moving, even slowly, towards solution-focused thinking? Then you're training your brain. Are you catching yourself more often when you spiral? Then you're making progress. Are you asking better questions more consistently? Then the new pathways are forming. That's all you need. Consistent practice. Patient repetition. Because here's what neuroscience has shown. The brain can begin forming new patterns surprisingly quickly. Studies show that focused, deliberate practice can start creating measurable changes in neural pathways within just a few weeks. Not complete transformation, but noticeable shifts. You start catching yourself faster when you spiral. You redirect more easily when worry appears. Solutions start occurring to you more readily. And over time, months and years, these small shifts compound into something remarkable. Your default response to difficulty changes. Where you used to freeze, you now engage. Where you used to panic, you now pause. Where you used to see walls, you now see challenges to navigate. And my friend, when that becomes your default, life feels completely different. Not easier, necessarily. Challenges still appear. Difficulties still arise. But your relationship with them transforms. They stop feeling like enemies attacking you. They start feeling like puzzles, inviting you to think. And thinking, exploring, problem solving, that's engaging. That's energizing. It's so different from the exhausting experience of just worrying. Let me give you something specific you can do starting today. The Solution Journal. At the end of each day, write down one problem you faced and how you handled it. Not perfectly handled, not expertly solved, just how you responded. Maybe you stayed calm when you could have panicked. Maybe you asked for help instead of struggling alone. Maybe you tried a different approach when the first one didn't work. Whatever it was, write it down. Over time, you'll have pages of evidence that you're capable, that you do find ways through difficulty, that problems don't defeat you. And when you face something hard in the future, you can look back at that journal. Look at all these times I figured something out. Look at all these challenges I navigated. I can do this again. That's not empty positive thinking, my friend. That's evidence-based confidence. You're reminding your brain of what it's already proven it can do. Another powerful practice. Study how other people solve problems. Watch people who stay calm under pressure. How do they think? What questions do they ask? Read about people who overcame serious challenges. What mindset did they have? What did they focus on? Talk to someone you respect about how they handle difficulty. What's their mental process? You're not trying to copy them exactly. You're exposing your brain to different patterns, different ways of thinking, different approaches, and your brain absorbs these patterns, learns from them, integrates what works. This is how mental skills develop, not in isolation, through observation, practice, and repetition. And here's something beautiful about this process. As you train your brain to look for solutions, you start noticing them everywhere. In books you read, in conversations you have, in situations you observe. Your brain becomes a solution-finding machine, not because you're smarter than before, but because you've trained your attention, and attention is everything. Where attention goes, energy flows. Where energy flows, growth happens. If your attention constantly flows toward problems, worry, and obstacles, that's what grows in your life. But when your attention flows toward solutions, possibilities, and actions, those are what expand. Same life, same challenges, completely different experience. And my friend, that different experience, it's available to you right now, today. Not someday when circumstances are better, not when life gets easier, now. With whatever you're facing, start asking better questions, start noticing solutions, start celebrating small wins. Train your brain, one thought at a time, one question at a time, one small success at a time, and watch what happens. At first, the changes will be subtle. You might not even notice them, but keep going, keep practicing, keep redirecting. And one day, maybe months from now, you'll face something difficult, and you'll realize your first thought wasn't, oh no. It was, okay, how do I handle this? And my friend, when that happens, you'll know something profound. You didn't just learn a new skill. You changed who you are. You became someone who moves toward solutions, someone who trusts their ability to figure things out, someone who sees challenges as invitations rather than threats. And that version of you, that's not some distant future possibility. That's who you're becoming right now, with every better question you ask, with every moment you choose curiosity over panic, with every small problem you decide to solve instead of dwelling on. Your brain is learning, adapting, growing, building new pathways, strengthening new patterns, creating a new default, and that new default will serve you for the rest of your life, in your career, in your relationships, in every challenge you face. Because you're not just solving today's problems, you're training yourself to solve tomorrow's too. You're building a mind that doesn't run from difficulty, a mind that engages with it, works with it, learns from it. And my friend, there's no greater investment you can make than that. Not in any external thing, but in the quality of your own thinking. Because everything else in your life flows from how you think. Your decisions, your relationships, your resilience, your peace, all of it starts in your mind. So train that mind well. Feed it good questions. Give it solution-focused practice. Celebrate its victories. And watch it transform into something powerful, something that doesn't just survive challenges, but grows through them. Because that's what trained minds do, my friend. They don't just endure difficulty. They use it. They learn from it. They become stronger because of it. And you can too, starting right now. With the very next thought you choose, with the very next question you ask, with the very next challenge you face, your brain is ready to learn. All you have to do is teach it. Chapter 8. Becoming the person who always finds the way. Hey, my friend, I want to talk to you about something I've been observing for years now. There's a certain type of person that others naturally turn to when things get difficult. You know who I'm talking about. Maybe you know someone like this in your own life. When a crisis hits at work, people look to them. When a family situation gets complicated, people ask for their perspective. When a friend is stuck, they're the one who gets the call. And here's what's interesting. It's not always the smartest person in the room. It's not always the most experienced. It's not always the one with the most resources. It's the person who has developed something more valuable than any of those things. A mindset that refuses to stay stuck. These are the people who, when everyone else is frozen by a problem, quietly start looking for the way through it. They don't panic. They don't spiral. They don't waste energy complaining about how unfair the situation is. Instead, they get curious. They get engaged. They start asking questions. And somehow, they find a path forward. Now, here's what I want you to understand, and this is crucial. These people weren't born this way. Nobody comes out of the womb knowing how to handle difficulty with grace. Nobody is naturally immune to stress or worry or fear. The people who handle challenges well, they learned how, often through experience, through facing difficulties, through discovering what works and what doesn't. And the most important thing they learned is this: problems are not rare events. They're part of the journey. Careers face setbacks. Relationships hit rough patches. Plans change unexpectedly. Health issues arise. Financial pressures appear. This isn't bad luck. This isn't punishment. This is just life. And the people who navigate life most successfully aren't the ones who avoid problems. They're the ones who develop a different relationship with difficulty. They stop asking, "Why is this happening?" and start asking, What's the best way forward? That shift, my friend, that simple shift in question changes everything. Let me tell you about someone I know. We'll call her Rachel. Rachel works in a demanding industry, high pressure, tight deadlines, complicated projects. Things go wrong constantly, and over the years, she's built a reputation, not for being brilliant, though she's certainly capable, not for being the most technically skilled, though she knows her stuff. She's known as the person who figures things out. When a project hits a wall, when a client situation gets messy, when the team doesn't know what to do next, people turn to Rachel. And I was curious about this, so one day I asked her directly, "How do you stay so calm when everything's chaotic? How do you always seem to find a solution?" You know what she told me? She said she used to be terrible at handling problems. Early in her career, whenever something went wrong, she'd panic. Her mind would race. She'd feel overwhelmed. Sometimes she'd even avoid dealing with difficult situations altogether. But then she noticed something important. All that panic, all that avoidance, it never made the problem go away. The problem was still there, waiting, and avoiding it usually made it worse. So she started experimenting with a different approach. Whenever a challenge appeared, she'd pause, just for a moment, long enough to take a breath. Then she'd ask herself one simple question: what's the next useful step? Not the perfect solution, not the complete answer, not some brilliant strategy, just the next useful step. Maybe that step was gathering information. Maybe it was asking for help. Maybe it was trying one small approach to see what happened. But that question, that focus on the next step, changed how her brain engaged with problems. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the size of the challenge, she focused on movement. And movement, even small movement, creates something powerful. Momentum. Momentum changes how difficulty feels, my friend. When you're stuck, when you're frozen, problems feel enormous, impossible, like walls you can't climb. But once you start moving, even if that movement is tiny, something shifts. Confidence begins to build. Okay, I did something. What's next? Options start appearing. That worked a little. What if I try this? The problem is still there, but it doesn't feel as heavy anymore because you're not just staring at it. You're working with it. And over time, Rachel discovered something remarkable. The more she practiced this approach, the less afraid she became of uncertainty. Most people fear uncertain situations because they assume uncertainty means danger. But Rachel learned something different. Uncertainty just means the full picture hasn't appeared yet. Information is still emerging. Possibilities are still revealing themselves, and information can always be used. This perspective created a quiet confidence in her. Not arrogance, not overconfidence, just a steady trust that even when she didn't know the answer, she could figure out the next step. And if that step didn't work, she'd learn something and try a different step. This is what it means to have a solution-oriented mindset, my friend. It's not about having all the answers up front. It's about trusting your ability to find answers as you go. And here's something beautiful about developing this mindset. It influences everyone around you. Have you noticed this? When one person stays calm in a chaotic situation, others start to calm down too. When one person asks a constructive question instead of panicking, it shifts the whole room's energy. When one person says, "Okay, What can we actually do about this? It gives everyone else permission to stop spiraling and start solving. Calmness is contagious. So is panic. And the person who brings calm into a difficult situation often becomes the unofficial leader, whether they have an official title or not. Because in moments of uncertainty, people don't follow authority. They follow composure. They follow the person who seems to know where they're going, even if that person is just taking it one step at a time. Now, I know what you might be thinking. That sounds great, but I'm not naturally calm like that. I'm not the person people turn to. I'm the one who panics. And my friend, I hear you. But remember what I said earlier, these people weren't born this way. Rachel wasn't naturally calm. She trained herself to be. And you can train yourself too. It starts with small moments. A minor inconvenience happens. Your first instinct is to react with frustration. But instead, you pause just for a second. You take a breath. You ask, is this worth my energy? What can I actually do about this? That's one repetition, one practice round. The next day, something else small goes wrong. You pause again. You choose your response instead of just reacting. Another repetition. Over time, these small moments add up. You're training your nervous system, teaching it that not everything requires a panic response. You're building the neural pathways for calm thinking under pressure. And gradually, this becomes your default. You stop being the person who collapses when things get hard. You become the person who steadies when things get hard. And my friend, that transformation, it changes how you see yourself. Because identity matters more than most people realize. The story you tell yourself about who you are shapes how you show up in the world. If you see yourself as someone who can't handle stress, you'll avoid challenges. You'll shrink from difficulty. But if you start seeing yourself as someone who finds ways through challenges, even imperfect ways, you'll engage differently. You'll be willing to try, to experiment, to take that next step even when you're not sure where it leads. And over time, you accumulate evidence. I handled that difficult conversation. It wasn't perfect, but I did it. I found a solution to that problem at work. It took some tries, but I figured it out. I stayed calm when I could have panicked. I'm getting better at this. Each piece of evidence strengthens the new identity. And the stronger that identity becomes, the more capable you actually become. Not because you magically gain new skills, but because you're willing to use the skills you have. You're willing to try things, to learn, to adapt. And that willingness, that's what separates people who grow from people who stay stuck. Now let me tell you about something powerful that happens when you develop this mindset. You discover a kind of courage you didn't know you had. Not the loud, dramatic kind of courage. Not the fearless hero stuff. A quieter form. The courage to face problems directly instead of avoiding them. The courage to stay present with difficulty instead of numbing out or distracting yourself. The courage to keep moving forward even when you can't see the whole path. This courage doesn't eliminate fear. You still feel uncertain sometimes. You still worry. But you don't let those feelings stop you. You feel the fear and ask the question anyway. What's my next step? You notice the worry and take action anyway. What can I do right now? You acknowledge the uncertainty and move forward anyway. I'll figure it out as I go. And my friend, this might be the most important skill you ever develop, because life will always contain challenges, always present uncertainties, always throw curveballs. But if you know deep in your bones that you can handle whatever comes, that you'll find a way through it somehow, everything changes, not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. Your capacity expands, your resilience deepens, your confidence grows, and people notice. They notice that you don't fall apart when things go wrong. They notice that you ask productive questions when others are just complaining. They notice that you seem to find options when others only see obstacles. And gradually, you become the person they turn to, not because you have all the answers, but because you have the willingness to search for them. Not because you never struggle, but because you don't stay stuck in struggle. Not because difficulty doesn't affect you, but because you've learned to work with it instead of against it. And my friend, when you reach that point, when you become that person, something beautiful happens. You realize that the challenges you face aren't obstacles blocking your path. They're opportunities to prove to yourself again and again that you're capable. Each problem you solve builds your confidence. Each setback you navigate strengthens your resilience. Each moment you choose calm over panic reinforces your identity as someone who handles things well. And over time, you accumulate so much evidence of your own capability that self-doubt starts to lose its grip. Not completely. You're human. Doubts will still appear, but they don't control you anymore because you have too much proof that you can figure things out. You've done it before, many times, in many different situations, and you'll do it again. Let me give you something practical you can start doing today. The capability inventory. Sit down and make a list, a real list, written out. Write down every difficult thing you've successfully navigated in your life, big things and small things, recent things and things from years ago, that time you handled a conflict at work, that time you figured out a complicated problem, that time you helped someone through a crisis, that time you pushed through when you wanted to give up, that time you learned something hard, that time you had a difficult conversation. Write it all down, and when you're done, look at that list. Really look at it. That's evidence, my friend. Evidence of your capability, evidence that you've been finding ways through difficulty your entire life. You might not have given yourself credit for it. You might have minimized it or forgotten it, but it's there. It's real. And the next time you face something hard, pull out that list. Remind yourself, I've handled difficult things before. I found a way through. I can do it again. That's not empty affirmation. That's truth based on evidence. Another practice. Study your own problem-solving patterns. When you successfully handle something difficult, pause afterwards. Ask yourself, what did I do that worked? How did I think about this? What helped me move forward? You're not just solving the problem, you're learning about your own process. Over time, you'll start noticing patterns. I do better when I talk things through with someone. I think more clearly after I've slept on it. I get unstuck when I break big problems into smaller pieces. I stay calmer when I write things down. These insights are gold, my friend, because once you know what helps you, you can deliberately use those strategies when you need them. You're not just hoping you'll handle the next challenge well. You're setting yourself up to handle it well by using what you know works for you. And here's something else that happens as you develop this capability. You start helping other people develop it too. Not by lecturing them, not by telling them what to do, but by modeling it, by showing them what it looks like to stay steady in difficulty. When you ask, "What can we do about this?" instead of, "This is terrible," you're teaching. When you pause and breathe instead of reacting immediately, you're demonstrating. When you focus on next steps instead of dwelling on problems, you're leading. And people learn more from watching what you do than from hearing what you say. Your calmness gives them permission to be calm. Your solution focus shows them it's possible. Your refusal to stay stuck inspires them to keep moving. And my friend, that ripple effect, that's one of the most meaningful contributions you can make. Not just solving your own problems, but showing others they can solve theirs too. Not just finding your own way through difficulty, but helping others discover their capacity to do the same. This is how communities get stronger, how teams become more resilient, how families support each other better. One person at a time choosing a different response to difficulty. One person at a time refusing to stay stuck. One person at a time becoming someone who finds the way. And you can be that person, my friend. Not someday. Not when you're more ready. Not when life is easier. Right now. With whatever you're facing today, you already have everything you need. The ability to pause. The ability to ask better questions. The ability to take one small step. That's enough to start. And once you start, momentum builds. One small success leads to another. One good decision reinforces the next. And gradually, over time, you transform. Not into someone without problems, but into someone who knows how to move through problems. Not into someone without fear, but into someone who doesn't let fear make the final decision. Not into someone without struggles, but into someone who uses struggles to become stronger. And when that transformation happens, when you look back and realize how much you've grown, you'll understand something profound. The challenges you faced weren't trying to break you. They were trying to build you. Every difficulty was an invitation to develop strength you didn't know you needed. Every setback was an opportunity to practice resilience. Every moment of uncertainty was a chance to trust yourself more deeply. And you accepted those invitations. You did the work. You practiced the pause. You asked better questions. You became the person who finds the way. Not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. And my friend, you are worth it. You're worth the effort of training your mind. You're worth the practice of choosing better responses. You're worth becoming the most capable, resilient version of yourself. So keep going. Keep choosing calm over panic. Keep choosing questions over complaints. Keep choosing movement over paralysis, one moment at a time, one challenge at a time, one choice at a time. And watch who you become, someone strong, someone capable, someone others can count on, someone who, when difficulty appears, doesn't run, someone who faces it, works with it, learns from it, someone who always somehow finds the way. That person is already inside you, my friend. You're just learning to let them out. Chapter 8. Becoming the person who always finds the way. I want to talk to you about something I've been observing for years now. There's a certain type of person that others naturally turn to when things get difficult. When a crisis hits, when confusion fills the room, when nobody knows what to do next, people look to them, not because they're the smartest, not because they have all the answers, but because they've developed something more valuable, a mindset that refuses to stay stuck. These are the people who, when everyone else freezes, quietly start looking for the way through. They don't panic. They don't complain. They don't waste energy on why me. Instead, they ask, what's the next step? And here's what I need you to understand. These people weren't born this way. Nobody comes out of the womb knowing how to handle difficulty with grace. The people who navigate challenges well learned how, often through painful experience, through facing setbacks, through discovering what works. And the most important thing they learned is this: problems aren't rare events. They're part of life. Careers face obstacles. Relationships hit rough patches. Plans change. Health issues arise. Money gets tight. This isn't bad luck. This is just being human. And the people who thrive aren't the ones who avoid problems. They're the ones who develop a different relationship with difficulty. They stop asking, why is this happening? And start asking, what's the best way forward? That shift changes everything. I know someone like this. We'll call her Sarah. She works in a high-pressure industry where things go wrong constantly. And over the years, she's built a reputation as the person who figures things out. When I asked her how she stays so calm, you know what she said? She told me she used to panic constantly. Early in her career, whenever something went wrong, her mind would race. She'd feel overwhelmed. Sometimes she'd avoid problems altogether. But she noticed something. All that panic never made the problem go away. So she started experimenting with a different approach. Whenever a challenge appeared, she'd pause, just long enough to breathe. Then she'd ask, what's the next useful step? Not the perfect solution, not some brilliant strategy, just the next useful step. Maybe that step was gathering information, maybe asking for help, maybe trying one small thing. But that question changed how her brain engaged with problems. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the size of the challenge, she focused on movement. And movement creates momentum. When you're stuck, problems feel enormous, impossible. But once you start moving, even tiny movements, something shifts. Confidence builds. Okay, I did something. What's next? Options appear. That helped a little. What if I try this? The problem is still there, but it doesn't feel as heavy anymore. Sarah discovered something else, too. She became less afraid of uncertainty. Most people fear uncertain situations because they assume uncertainty means danger. But Sarah learned differently. Uncertainty just means the full picture hasn't appeared yet. Information is still emerging, and information can always be used. This perspective created quiet confidence in her, not arrogance, just steady trust that even when she didn't know the answer, she could figure out the next step. And here's something beautiful. This mindset influences everyone around you. When one person stays calm in chaos, others calm down too. When one person asks, what can we do? Instead of panicking, it shifts the whole room. Calmness is contagious. So is panic. And the person who brings calm becomes the leader, whether they have a title or not. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's great, but I'm not naturally calm. I'm the one who panics. My friend Sarah wasn't naturally calm either. She trained herself. And you can too. It starts with small moments. Something minor goes wrong. Your instinct is frustration. But instead, you pause. One breath. You ask, is this worth my energy? What can I actually do? That's one repetition. The next day, something else happens. You pause again. Another repetition. Over time, these moments add up. You're training your nervous system, teaching it that not everything requires panic. You're building neural pathways for calm thinking. And gradually, this becomes your default. You stop being the person who collapses under pressure. You become the person who steadies under pressure. And that transformation changes how you see yourself. Identity matters more than most people realize. If you see yourself as someone who can't handle stress, you'll avoid challenges. But if you see yourself as someone who finds ways through difficulty, you'll engage differently. You'll be willing to try, to experiment, to take that next step. And you'll accumulate evidence. I handled that tough conversation. I solved that problem at work. I stayed calm when I could have panicked. Each piece of evidence strengthens the new identity. And here's what happens when you develop this mindset. You discover a quiet kind of courage, not fearless hero courage, something subtler. The courage to face problems directly, the courage to stay present with difficulty, the courage to keep moving when you can't see the whole path. This courage doesn't eliminate fear. You still feel uncertain sometimes, but you don't let those feelings stop you. You feel the fear and ask anyway. What's my next step? You notice the worry and act anyway. What can I do right now? You acknowledge the uncertainty and move anyway. I'll figure it out. And my friend, this might be the most important skill you ever develop. Because life will always contain challenges, always present uncertainties. But when you know you can handle whatever comes, everything changes. Not because life gets easier, because you get stronger, and people notice. They notice you don't fall apart. They notice you ask productive questions. They notice you find options when others see only obstacles. And gradually, you become the person they turn to. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're willing to search for them. Let me give you something practical. The capability inventory. Sit down and list every difficult thing you've successfully navigated, big and small, recent and from years ago. That conflict you handled, that problem you solved, that time you helped someone, that time you pushed through. Write it all down, then look at that list. That's evidence of your capability, my friend. Evidence that you've been finding ways through difficulty your entire life. Next time you face something hard, pull out that list. Remind yourself, I've handled difficult things before. I found a way. I can do it again. That's not empty affirmation. That's truth based on evidence. Conclusion. The journey forward. My friend, we've covered a lot of ground together. We talked about how your brain naturally focuses on problems and how you can train it to look for solutions instead. We explored why calm minds solve problems better than smart minds in a panic. We discovered how to see problems as information rather than personal failures. We learned the Stoic principle of focusing only on what you can control. We walked through the framework high performers use to think clearly under pressure. And we talked about how to become the person who always finds a way forward. But now comes the most important part. What you do with all of this. Because reading about these ideas, understanding them intellectually, that's the easy part. The real transformation happens when you actually practice them. When you catch yourself spiraling and choose to redirect. When you feel panic rising and choose to pause instead. When you face a problem and choose to ask, "What can I do?" instead of, "Why me?" Those moments, my friend, those choices, that's where everything changes. And I want to be honest with you about something. This isn't a one-time fix. You're not going to read this and suddenly never struggle again. You'll still have hard days. You'll still feel overwhelmed sometimes. You'll still worry. That's being human. But you'll have tools now, awareness, practices you can return to. And each time you use those tools, you get a little bit stronger. Each time you redirect your thinking, the new pathway gets a little clearer. Each time you choose calm over panic, that choice becomes a little easier next time. This is how transformation actually works, not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small choices accumulated over time. And those choices, they compound. 6 months from now, if you practice these principles, you'll notice situations that used to overwhelm you don't hit the same way anymore. A year from now, you'll handle stress differently, more calmly, more effectively. 5 years from now, people will see you as someone who stays steady when things get difficult, not because you magically became a different person, but because you practice becoming a better version of yourself, one choice at a time, one pause at a time, one better question at a time. So here's what I want you to do, my friend. Don't try to implement everything at once. That's overwhelming. Pick one thing, just one practice from everything we've talked about. Maybe it's the 3-breath reset when you feel stress rising. Maybe it's asking, "What can I control?" when you start worrying. Maybe it's keeping that solution journal each evening. Whatever resonates most with you, start there. Practice it for a week. Get comfortable with it. Then add another practice, then another. Slowly, steadily, you'll build a toolkit that serves you for life. And remember this, the challenges you face aren't trying to break you, they're building you. Every difficulty is an invitation to practice these skills. Every setback is an opportunity to prove to yourself that you can bounce back. Every moment of uncertainty is a chance to trust yourself more deeply. The problems aren't going away, my friend, but you're learning to move through them with more grace, more clarity, more strength. And that makes all the difference. Because at the end of the day, powerful minds don't see fewer problems than everyone else. They just refuse to let problems be the end of the story. They see problems as the beginning, as information, as puzzles waiting to be solved. And they trust that even when the solution isn't immediately visible, it can be discovered one step at a time, one question at a time, one choice at a time. You have that same power, my friend. You've always had it. You're just learning to use it now. So go forward with confidence, not because life will be easy, but because you're becoming someone who can handle what life brings. Someone who pauses instead of panicking. Someone who looks for solutions instead of dwelling on problems. Someone who keeps moving forward even when the path isn't clear. Someone who always somehow finds the way. That person is you, and I believe in you. Now go show yourself what you're capable of.